No, we just had a ice cream at home. Pretty good.
I almost.
Big crowd.
You're tired, you were a tired teacher, you tell her about you. And it's proud of her, not to be it, you know, 7 in the morning and going and go ahead.
You know, it's not.
I give. Good, how you doing?
First day of school.
Yeah, same here. Oh, yeah. It's always fun.
You know, Mom, I know.
Yes.
You have your grandson in first day of school lunch, right? She said that for a while. I confused before, you know, everybody wants to reach a child. Always says, like, oh, sure, he's this much taller than my team. He has literally full shoulders up to your eye. More like 6 feet early, but all right, worried about that. I'm done for the 58. So I don't know. I can. Sometimes you can problem, right? I think it was good. She was just saying that. I'm yes. Just love you eating. So. Okay. You can suck it. Oh, I thought you said. Never got that. Yeah, like I'm trying. No, like shots, sure. Oh yeah, it was in the boat. It was in the boat. I asked him to check for it. Oh, I have to. Sure, sure. Yeah, next to her. Sure. No, it's leaving her. Not here for that. Yeah. This is come to my party. Great time.
Yeah, Tom, be on tonight. Oh,
He was sitting in a midnight song. You were partying pretty hard. Yes, you were. They didn't know how to party hard. Like everybody, I like party now. Go over, I'd like to take his house. Sometimes I feel like. This sounds right. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that. Anytime, next year we're gonna have. Around the
No, he was gonna try to zoom in from camp, but we're gonna sort of work. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling the Board of Trustees meeting September 7th to order. Please rise for the pledge. Okay, public comments.
Yes. Should we wait for Tom and Peter to join us? There's time.
Sorry.
Everybody knows who I am, right?
For posterity, identify yourself.
For the recording. Christine, I'm at 46 Washington Ave, those resident believers. I'm here to file a complaint against the trustee for some egregious behavior as far as village codes are concerned. They will be on paper and forwarded to you with proof once I'm done with what I'm doing here. Little background information. Back on June 15th at the village board meeting, trustee Parker made some comments to the code enforcement officer about an RV allegedly parked on village parkland across the street from her house. Sometime in early August, my next door neighbor who happens to live between myself and trustee Parker was sanding some wood, not real sure what he was doing. And she approached him and asked him to quiet down. So, oh, I love you guys, but can you keep it quiet? Neighborly kind of stuff. August 11th at 10 something-ish in the morning, I got a phone call from the code enforcement officer that trustee Parker called complaining about noise in my backyard. I didn't get the benefit of a text, an email, a message, a phone call, and knock on the door, and I want you, but could you quiet down? A couple days later, 3 large trucks showed up at her house and erected a tent behind her house, which happened to be Cap Village Parkland. You can refer to my first comment about complaining about an RV on Village Parkland. The next day, her daughter showed up at my door, offered me a consolation bottle of Prosecco because they're about to throw a large wedding in her backyard, which is her right, except half of it's on Village Parkland. And that the DJ would probably be done about 10:45 that night, which by the way is 45 minutes past code. I'm sure trustee Parker knows that as liaison to the auditorium. The noise ordinance is a very big issue with that building. Anyways, her comments were, we'll probably be singing afterwards and you won't hear it. She did assure me that parking would not be an issue. They sent out parking stuff with the invitations. They're being very responsive about that. Fantastic. The next day, there was the wedding occurred. It was a very large wedding. It was a very loud wedding, as is their right. Most of it was her property. Some of it was Village Parkland. 10:45 came and went. 10:55 came. I walked out back just in time to hear, "Don't worry, folks, we're here for another hour," coming out of the DJ. At which point, about 11:15 at night, I started measuring decibels, which were 67 or so, 45 or ish feet from her property line, which is a violation of the noise ordinance. And I just want to say, I wouldn't care, except she called code enforcement on me for installing a swimming pool liner just a week earlier. So I was receiving text messages all night, people complaining about the noise, not that I can do anything about it. I believe the neighbors up the street called the cops. The DJ stopped at about 11:59, yada, yada. During the wedding, there was in fact a guest of that wedding parked on the alleged Village Parkland she was complaining about in the June 15th meeting where Jane had her RV. She was now parking wedding guests
And the next morning I went outside to see smoke rising from an unattended fire pit, which is also a violation of code. And this is coming 5 days after Governor Hochul and DEC Commissioner Basil Sagos released a press statement stating that we were in a unprecedented drought and an absolute high campfire warning. So not only was it a violation of village code, it was really irresponsible. So anyways, the reason I'm here was to file a complaint against said trustee Parker, and I was gonna ask her to resign because I was really pissed, to put it mildly. Anyhow, I read your ethics codes and there's absolutely nothing in there about village board members breaking village codes, which I think is pretty messed up. So I am going to file my complaints with the complaints written down with the codes that were violated to you with the actual proof, whatever, digital screenshots, decibel readings, etc. And I'll follow up to make sure those were taken care of. But also I would like to encourage the board to possibly revisit the ethics policy and maybe put something in there about village trustees complaining about their neighbors doing something, and turning around a week later and doing the exact same thing. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to make one thing clear. Heidi did not call to complain. She was concerned about a noise coming from your
Oh, okay.
house.
That's not how it came across. Or
And-
comments to me during the markets.
Okay, any other comments?
The reason I called is because I thought you and Jim were both away, there were no cars, and it was a sound for a day and a half. And I was concerned that something was wrong.
Do you have my telephone number?
Yes,
Okay.
but you haven't been speaking with Christine, so I figured I would ask somebody, an impartial party that could go in, and I wasn't gonna go.
You
into
you
your-
have my phone number, right?
Excuse me. I wasn't gonna go into your backyard. And so I called the code enforcement officer and I said, I think there might be something wrong. Okay, honestly, if this may sound like a joke to you, I thought something was wrong. And it was there, clearly it was a misunderstanding. That's all I want to say.
Okay, moving on. No other public comment?
I don't know, I feel like this is of neighbors pissing on each other.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Village board member complaining about people using parkland and complaining about people
Do you
making
have
noise.
village land behind your house, Christine?
Am I using it? No,
Then do you have village land?
I sure do. I'm not
Yeah.
using it.
Then you've never used it.
No,
No, you've never used it for anything. You've never had a party at your house.
not on village parkland. I haven't, and certainly not 2 months after complaining to the village board that an RV is illegally parked on village.
I understood that there was a letter written requiring her to remove the tent at a certain date. Is that true?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I know that she doesn't own half the property behind her
Did
house.
anybody in this village administration send a letter to Heidi? Okay, and ask her to remove the tent.
Days
And,
after the celebration, yes.
and the tent was removed on the day that the request was made.
I have no idea. I didn't see the letter.
I didn't ask you. I'm
It
asking,
seems like you're asking me.
I'm asking Peter. Peter asked him.
Yeah, I said the letter.
He's,
I have a question for you, Tom. Did you sit in a meeting here back in, I would say like maybe October of last year, complaining about people using the auditorium village parkland? They might get drunk and hurt themselves.
that's right.
Because you did, and that was village parkland, and there was lots of people drinking and having a great time, and quite frankly, I don't care, except hypocrisy. That's what it is.
Well,
I would hold my board members
All
to
right,
go, I understand.
Folks, this could get totally out of hand.
You're right, Gary, you're
And I-
absolutely right. I knew this was gonna go exactly like this because nobody's gonna do anything about this. I'm not yelling, I'm not histrionics like you told me not to, I'm not flailing my arms, I'm not swearing. I knew this was gonna go exactly this way. So maybe I'll run for board and then I'll do whatever I want. Because that's the message that's being sent.
I'll sign your petition.
Great,
Now,
thank you.
now, did we have a response to the car issue? The village response to the car issue that was parked on James' property supposedly?
I don't know, there's no formal concern, it was just,
Okay, all right, so there was no action taken, Bob, you
I was questioned about it, but it's not parked on the pavement,
I referred to code enforcement. Is that part of the thing, and I don't know the jurisdiction.
Okay, so it was the
And I
car was,
I do not know the borders of all the departments.
and the car was moved.
I see it was moved.
Yes, okay.
It's part of their right. It's property. That's not the point, Tom. That's not the point. You're completely missing it.
Well, Christine, I don't want to call you exactly disagreeable, but I'll probably come close.
Go ahead a second. I don't care. There's all kinds
you
of
know,
opportunities to
you're-
strike you as well.
I'm sorry, but you're one of the big whiners in the village.
All right, all right, all right. When we- All right, get to that point, we stop. Moving on to the parking plan review, we have a
Yeah.
presentation from AP3 on the parking plan. Building on, I think, work that was done 7 years ago. Looking at many of the same issues and coming up with some of the same results. Let me know when you're ready.
Well, actually, I did look at the
Oh, there's Tom.
review from 2015, which I think was the time to generally address parking in the village.
Yeah.
And our study was specific on how to handle parking for other communities. And, I think it would be a good idea in connection with this report, to also think about how this year, it seems to me that we've had a real concerted effort to address parking for auditorium events, to address some of the big concerns that have been brought up around the use of the auditorium. It seems to me, and I don't live near the auditorium or really near anything, but it seems to me that a lot of progress was made on that front. And I think that's great. So I hope there'll be, kind of now that we're winding down at the end of the season, take a look at the things that did work this year. I know Molly made some really valiant efforts to get signs out, to get maps made and publicized and posted on the website in connection with the events. And the shuttle operating even during rain on one day with only a couple people on it. So I think all those steps are wonderful. And we also have some serendipitous things occur for the Saratoga Opera event. I guess the opera loaned us the van that they were using to transport performers, to transport audience members, and that was helpful. So showed that people are really get to think that. So this was put together well before all of that happened. So some of what we talked about in here maybe if not obsolete, if not quite as relevant. But I think it does show that a concerted effort to address this problem has helped a lot and has shown that we can use the auditorium for a variety of events without incurring all kinds of really big problems with parking. And I personally find that really encouraging. Anyway, what we did is looked at every spot that we could think about in the village that would accommodate 5 or more cars and how they could be made useful to accommodate audiences at the auditorium. And as I note here, even though the space can accommodate 300 people, it's unlikely we would have events that size, and most of our events are well under 100. And we would recommend thinking about parking that would accommodate between 50 and 80 cars, which is plenty for most events that we have here. So this year we used the Zim Smith lot and the church lots, and I guess the ball field to some degree. I wasn't in on all that. And it didn't handle it. I don't know, maybe that's enough. Maybe the village doesn't need to do anything more than that. And there could be some improvements to make those work a little better, like permanent signs, wayfinding signs, shuttle stops, that kind of thing. So we looked at all these different spots and there's a kind of a grid at the end, so Gary has put it up here. It walks through all the different options. I'm not sure, I don't think I have to go through them all, but I will if you have questions. I think our final recommendation, if you do wish to invest in some kind of permanent parking arrangement for a smaller, that sort of mid-sized audience, we landed on the area near where the ice rink presently is. It's parkland and it would, the improvement that we were recommending is to investigate permeable pavers, which would allow grass to grow up over pavers. And it really wouldn't look like it's paved in any way, and it could be used as a park is presently, except for the few hours, and they really are literally not that many hours in a year where the performance or people would park there. And the parking on that spot would be in the evening, so one of the issues that I found about permeable pavers, just reading about them, is that if they're used too much, the grass can't grow and make it look park-like, but these would seldom be used in the daytime and probably, 2 or 3 hours in the few evenings, possibly as few, 20 or less per year. So I think that would maximize the, the virtue of the paper, which is to make it look like parkland. As to the existing ice rink, if you wish to keep that going, this would be a good opportunity to grade it, possibly even get a liner. I know the ice rink is, every time I walk by in the summer, in the winter, it's like a little ice or no ice or whatever. So that would make that a more viable ice rink. There are other issues with using it as an ice rink that aren't addressed here, but that's something that can happen here. My understanding is that permeable pavers require grading and then a layer of gravel, sand, pavers, and dirt and bricks. So it's not a small project. And it would optimally extend from where the ice rink is over, if you're looking at the ice rink, a look to the right into the property which right now is the grass. There aren't even any large trees there that we have to work around. The ice rink in the summer has a wonderful sunflower planted around it. Unfortunately, if we did execute this, some of the sunflowers would have to be relocated, but I think they would really be an advantage to turning it into a parking area because they could delineate. You didn't have to put up a fence or anything, it would be kind of unsightly. You'd be able to see, how far in you to go. Ideally, we could put up signs that would direct people to this lot and we would have to man it necessarily. And the shot from that spot to the auditorium is pretty direct and kind of scenic. So that is the gist of the thing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So for the ice rink, so I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing the area next to the rink.
And so I think you just based off these spaces, but I believe the ice rink would only accommodate somewhere in the 20 or 30 cars. But if you were,
Well, I will know.
okay.
So,
But if you look to the right of the ice rink, and looking at it, there's some spots there where people are presently parking and they continue to keep that as, available parking for residents. And then, I don't know.
well, what I'm trying to answer, what I'm trying to get at is about ice rink about 40 total, but if we choose to, at some point, if we choose to keep it so that we can put a liner in, how many spaces do you think that would be gained just using it on the side?
If you didn't use the ice rink for parking, I think you really have to, I just use like some, you have to get a real casing it off, but I think if I had a guess, 20 cars,
Yeah,
There is nodding, he's got a car parked in my.
did a little trial yesterday to see how they would actually fit in there.
We looked at that in 2015, and thought about 25.
Didn't we also think there needed to be some drainage?
Well, you have to like scrape the whole area, gravel, sand, sod. It would take a big effort to.
I mean, the installation of permanent pavers themselves would act as a force.
Yeah.
So that would help with a lot of it. And I agree with you that using it a few hours of the day for a few weekends of a few months of the year would likely not damage the grass that grows there, and so it's fairly discreet. I guess my big question, I think the one thing we'd have to work through is how do we stop it from being used as parking in other periods of time? So what kind of barrier or whatever would we put in place? Because once people see cars parked there for an event, people may think, okay, this is parking all the time. So I think because personally, I think this is the best option for having some temporary parking in the summer. It's going to cost a little bit of money, but it's least intrusive. But the one big question I'm trying to work through in my head anyway is how do we make sure that that's, because I would like for it not to be permanent parking throughout the year, ideally. Because I think if it was permanent parking, then we would have issues with the grass not growing and then.
But I also think that that's not permissible.
Yeah, right, exactly, and
I
that's
think
it,
we can
yeah,
get away with it short time, especially. with
Correct.
environment, and
I agree.
make it More attractive,
agree,
but possibly, and I'm just thinking now, because I'm raising this question before, there is existing parking for little leagues and.
Mhm.
And, we could leave that.
Yeah.
As it is now, and put up a couple of
temporary.
posts
removal
with
posts,
those.
Yeah.
Change it from the board, if it became a problem. I
Yeah.
mean, Possibly if that area.
Yeah, I just, one of those things, you just have that creep, right, where people, like, for instance, park in front of my house, like one car starts to park there, and then two cars. So I just think we should work through the idea of if people start to park there, just make sure that it is overflow temporary parking for larger events and not permanent parking for Sim Smith and everything else. Just some ideas about how we might block that up. Sorry, Dave.
There's a lot of components in this that. need to be-
No, I agree,
Yeah.
but this is the idea that I think has the most merit based off of what I've read. I think the ball field has always been sort of a enticing, but because it's existing parking, but I think it's just people are gonna use whatever is the easiest. It's hard to get to the ball field, to the auditorium, some of the other ideas. I think the church parking fairly well from what I heard. People that were organizing the auditorium events over the summer, so I think maybe continue to do those, but I think the ice rink one has the most merit, and also too, I have an interest in seeing how a permeable paver project might work in terms of applying it to other areas of the village. So using this as sort of a pilot, a large pilot. Yeah, it is a large, it's not gonna be cheap, I understand that, but I think
And it also wouldn't, I mean, it would be uniquely suitable, I think, for this purpose because. Of
Yeah.
the limited use.
correct.
As you know, the encroachment on the parks, I think that would be.
More
it would
difficult.
succeed.
Okay.
But that's just, I haven't done it.
Yeah.
Did we get any feedback from the churches themselves? Like, were they okay with the arrangement?
I
this
haven't
year?
talked to anybody yet.
I've talked to the church a few times. They seem to be okay. And I will tell you that in my experience so far, the events that we've had 2 churches willing to give their spaces, except the second church hasn't been used even once. That being said, that's probably because a lot of people ended up having their own auditorium, which is by the auditorium. So, in theory, if we keep the church lot, Methodist church lot, and the Sim Smith lot, so far, no one has gone to that third lot and needed. So maybe do away with the 2 church lots if we did something like this, but I don't know, it seems like they're okay with it.
Sharon?
I think we did a great job managing things this year. I think we tried to change the culture a little bit. But the fact is, we have a venue, 300 people, and the village does not own 1 parking space for those 300 people. So we're at the whims of literally everybody that we do business with. And it could all change tomorrow, and we would have nothing. I think putting one that is.
What do you mean?
manageable,
What do you mean it could all change tomorrow?
Maybe the churches, you get somebody else in
Oh,
there and
sure.
they don't want to do that.
Or there's a weddings, you know, like one thing that's mentioned in here is, you know, you never really know when the churches.
Right,
Are
we
gonna
did-
be
we
like, no, we
discussed-
don't have any parking here. It might be the most beautiful day and there's 32 people at the Zim. And there's 32 people there for a wedding and now all of a sudden we have an organ concert, but they've been very good at. You know, telling us when that's gonna be, but
I mean,
so far it's been okay, but.
I really think that this idea is really stellar. And we could use it in the winter as much as we can, it could be the sunflower lot. Make it, beautify it with sunflowers. I really feel that it's time to have something that we can manage, that we can take care of, that we can control, instead of everything always controlling us.
Peter, you had your hand up?
I was gonna say, I disagree with Matt on the fact that, I think when we looked at the lot, 7 years ago, we were concerned about people parking in playgrounds and people parking anywhere and everywhere in the village. And if we gave them a place to park and put up no parking signs, they wouldn't be parking in the playground. So I agree that this is a great bet for the auditorium, but it's also needed for the village residents who are just parking anywhere and everywhere. On their front lawns, anything, people just have no more places to park.
So having it only available in the summer? Would that be,
Whatever,
I mean, if it's going to be a skating rink in the winter, they wouldn't be able to park on it.
Right,
Or it's a skating rink with a parking lot in the summer, I should say.
So
That's,
Is there data on the audiences that come to the particular performance? The data I would mean is there a record kept of the attendance at a particular performance? And are you asking the question, did you arrive from out of town? If you came by car, how many people were in the car? Did you walk there because you live in the village? I think that there ought to be a season of data collecting so that you determine whether or not an additional slot to handle 25 or 34 cars is necessary in the short term. And if the data indicates that attendance at the auditorium events is increasing week after week, or month after month, or year after year, then yes, you can look at the fact that we may need to sacrifice visual areas in order to handle the use of the.
I was kind of dovetailing on something Peter said. Some years ago, somebody plotted out a plan for X number of spots down there. I don't remember. Okay. So, and I was thinking, we don't ever have 300. We don't ever have the place full, but that goes to what Lance's saying. What do we really need? Is this kind of like a solution in search of a problem? I kind of joust with that all the time. How many spots do we really need? Now, Lydia's study shows you've got about 100 without even considering I want to say a municipal one. You've got about 100 available, already. And so how many do you really need? And then it goes to another question, is would the community want more events that fill the house? And I'm just throwing that out. I'm not saying, you know, I feel this way after. I wonder if the community would want that all the time. But going back to, certainly right back to what Peter said, I always thought a great spot for a small municipal parking lot was right down in that area. You could start small, you could 20 cars.
Where you talking about?
Well, over in the vicinity of the
Basketball.
basketball courts to the north. And including up
Up
to,
by the skating.
yeah, the skating rink, the north of the skating rink where the dirt is, where the vendors park during the festivals and whatnot. You know what, Matt suggested electric vehicle chargers.
Mhm.
You know, why not?
One of the problems I recall when this came up last time is that people were worried about the visual impact of just a big parking lot. It's the
Well,
first
big-
thing when you come.
big-
And what's nice about the skating rink is it could be,
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
when people using it, there'd be vegetation screening it.
But it also could be a problem unless we do something to prevent cars from sinking into the ground. Because it's grass and it's wet.
I think that the permeable pavement would solve that problem. It would be, I mean, it's a very well draining product, so there wouldn't be any issue.
No, nothing drains there. That's the problem.
That's the
It'll
problem.
drain.
Well, that's what
It'll
you're saying
drain.
about bringing it back, bringing some extra gravel and stuff like, well, we'll see.
I mean, maybe we're getting a little bit too far afield,
Yeah.
but what about moving that whole idea just a little bit north, where drainage is less of an issue? And I don't know, but I think we're all heading in the same direction, and that makes the most sense. That spot makes the most sense.
I do think additional parking is needed for
Hmm.
events, because even before we started kind of the longest process of with an auditorium director and making things, trying to bring in some different acts and things like that, there was not enough parking for events as it was. So I do think more parking is needed. We did utilize the 2 additional lots this year with churches, and I think that helped offset it. Again, we are heavily relying on Sim Smith being always available for us, and to Sharon's point, that could change. I guess we could wait, but I do like the idea of having the flexibility of having some sort. And again, I'm not a big fan of blacktopping over everything, so this is an idea that is attractive to me, and it can be used for the markets. It can be used for the antique festival. It can be used for other large events that we have in the village, and it would concentrate most of the parking in one place so that people that return to the auditorium know exactly where to go for the most part. That's the auditorium lot, and this is where I walk to the auditorium. So I think it has a lot of merits. Could we get away without it? Maybe. But I think it's something we should strongly consider.
I agree. We do need some more parking. But kind of did a similar exercise to what Tom did. And even if, so if I take out the Zin, I don't want to think what it's because it's plan. So even taking that number out, have ball field, we have churches, have the lake avenue. That's already 140 spaces. I'm sorry, it's not. It's 144 right. But I did like the DW one, because it's right there. It's an easy walk. It's to and with a fresh coat of clean, a fresh coat of whatever. I think it needs to be spruced up anyway. Needs to tell them that.
But if there's a water main break and they gotta get the trucks out and that would severely limit the number of cars that could go there. That's in discussions with John, because we talked about it. And
You'd also really need to have, on the walkable, that means, a lot of the.
Well, the handicap issue, well,
Not so much handicap. I mean.
People don't like
It's
to
not, our word is, and people who come to events, unless they're staff, they want to do it.
Lance? Lance?
Yeah, just one more question. You refer to this as parkland. Is there a restriction?
That's why it's a skating rink.
What,
It's a skating rink that will be used for parking in the summer.
That's how we get around.
getting around it is not obeying the letter of the law.
But we have had skating rinks there the last 3 years.
Does anybody use the skating rink?
That's something that you can park.
Yes.
I would be in favor of skating. With 20 spots outside of it, start small, see if that goes. Because then we're up to. So we have 126.
I think we can take the ball. Oh. You know, so you're dancing around. And there's no 7-year-old.
Hey, take it, friends.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we make this 20.
Senior citizens.
Senior citizen. park.
Molly, was the ball field used heavily?
Not really at all. No, the
Not
ball
at
field
all.
was kind of completely out of commission.
And I know the Episcopal Church wasn't, but it was across, I never saw them.
The Episcopal Church rarely was, but again, to the point of if we have bigger events. But to Lance's point, let's see what those bigger events are, let's see if these come. And while it's really attractive and this is a great idea, I also want to think about the idea of bringing people in and saying, here's one spot to go, and then the shuttle can go back and forth to that one spot rather than looking for people everywhere and seeing where people get lost.
I think that is a really good point. And for most events, this could cover it. It's true, we do have a lot of different places, but I mean, a lot of different places. And getting from here to there in the building. So we have to look into better ways.
Speaking from experience with the restaurant, people will park as close as they possibly can to where they want to go. Not everybody, but most people, they don't, you can put parking signs up, you can do whatever, they're gonna park.
Well, I think that problem has been decreased exponentially since Bob came on. Bob,
I get a question on pavers. Where are you planning to use the pavers? Because if the ground is slightly damp or changes, pavers gonna do this. If you drive on.
Have to get an engineer to support that.
So that cost goes with it.
The permeable pavers are either a concrete lattice with where the grass and gravel, sod and grass grow up through the concrete lattice, or you can get permeable pavers that are interlocking plastic lattice. And you put, again, gravel, dirt. So it's not like a hard concrete paver where it would be subject to heaving, sinking with damp and things like that. It actually it almost forms, a skeleton for the ground.
I've seen in the past.
Yeah.
The heat.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think if it was done correctly, if it was scooped out, leveled, and the right amount of subsurface put in, I don't think it would be a problem,
so do our roads heat.
but I'm not an engineer. My dad did it for 40 years, so I got a little bit of knowledge from him.
You did a whole bunch of landing mats put them down. Yes, you go through them. If they can take a landing aircraft.
Yeah.
Red take the cars, they're hard to find them. I have a question.
Scott,
I'm a little confused on, and I think this will probably be a game changer or whatever. Are we going to be using our
parking from to finance this project?
Depends.
If we can't use parking, would that change the mind of the residents of the board? Mind, it's gonna be very costly, we all know that. We all know that there's a large chunk of we could use. If there is a way around it, we can present it as a state thing. I'm on both sides of the coin. Of course, I care more about residents walking with their, you know, their door and saying they're gonna park. Or that's gonna be pushing on the park lot.
Yeah, we can't park on.
That I can't park on. But I mean, outside of that, I've lived here for a very long time. That piece of property right there is just an eyesore, or it, and it has a possibility of being something nice. And I don't think, you know, outside of people, you know, that are going to hear about this and be a little bit upset. House, I think we show them that it can be done in a very tasteful way. I mean, because we talked about adding extra parking for residents too along on the other side of the Smith Woods or Joe Park. You know, we talked about trying to figure out what we can do with lined up where cars park right now off the side of the road. We talked about ideas we make that. And as far as what Matt has said also, this would be a great opportunity to find out if we use these somewhere in areas and something like that for village people to park on. And not worry, because one of the biggest problems as far as creating parking areas for village residents is that, you know, the trees surrounding area and change. If this is something that, you know, we find out is a plausible thing to do, I think it'd be a good opportunity to maybe use it for a lot of other reasons in here to create residential parking that are a little bit more clean and nice looking. And I mean, I think if we can present this to be able to use parkland funds, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't try to do something that.
You can't use parkland funds to
Not for
do a
residential.
parking, any
I
parking. lot.
understand, but we can for a skating.
Yeah. I priced out the liners already and the base that has to go on. So
Why couldn't you use parking funds for parking?
it's in the legislation.
If it's, I think that, like, again, I wish Tom P was here, but.
I think he's here virtually.
I would like to look into, clearly there are parks that have parking lots. And I think some of the rules say if the parking is used for the park, that it can be used for that. So I'd like to look into some of those options too, because this would be a parking lot used for.
I don't think it matters, but trust but verify.
I would like to look into that also. I think the skating rink is a good idea. I think the thing is the reason why we're looking at a costlier option to begin with is to have something that looks nice so people don't have a parking lot. And if we could easily just blacktop it and say, have done with it, and it'd be cheap and we could create 40 new parking spots, but I don't think anybody wants to do that. Nobody wants to take away green space in the village. And, you know, we're trying to solve the problem while keeping it looking nice at the same time. And unfortunately, that oftentimes costs money. But I'd like to, it's possible at all these parkland funds. I think that'd be the best solution all around.
It's kind of a unique situation because at least initially we only need parking.
Exactly.
Of the time, and it would be in the area. Hopefully at least drainage and hopefully appearance.
Well, some of that is hardly called green space, it's dirt space.
And
if you look-
asphalt, there's a strip of asphalt.
Yeah, and
down
a strip of asphalt. I don't know, you know, I tend to agree that with Scott, in a way, you should create, this should be multi-purpose. It shouldn't just be for auditorium parking. It should, we need some additional municipal parking.
Well, maybe call it event.
Whatever, yeah. and-
I would think that this paver idea would hold up well for daily use.
Probably.
like this. I mean,
You think so?
sorry?
It works fine.
Does it?
Paper done well. We've ever been up to the Wild Center.
Yeah.
Up in,
Cover.
Upper Lake,
So
their
this is
entire
all-
parking lot.
This is all to be researched, obviously. It's all to be researched, obviously, but I think,
Different time.
it's hard for me to believe that you can park a car. Grass and it's going to grow.
Ah, yes, but you're not asking to park the cars 24 hours a time. That's the point here.
I don't know, there's a car that can park there 365 days.
There's a few cars that have been.
And if you don't mind saying, if you say you want to have this available as a community park plan, then you're getting rid of the green space and you're looking at 20 cars parked there 18 hours a day. Rather than the open space, the green space.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
So.
But I mean, we've been, I don't want to belabor this, but we've been talking about this thing for 25 years. I can remember. We've created like 2 parking spots. I mean, you know, you either got to do something that has some scope that solves part of it. It doesn't have to be a huge, it doesn't have to be a 40 or 50 spot. Wow.
Historically, when people arrived at Round Lake, they could take their carriages to their houses. And then their carriages and their horses were parked down where the town hall,
But
maintenance areas.
that's kind of an interesting point, Mike, because I think that you might find that people would not take advantage of this parking. Because they have to walk to their homes. And if they did, then we could satellite them out somewhere else.
Yeah, but there are parts of the village where parking is done in one place and people walk to their house. I mean, the strip of pavement along by the basketball court now is used for parking for people that have to walk to the house.
I think we could use it as as an option. The immediate solution would be for this solving for the auditorium parking issue. And then it's there, once it's there, and it could be, we could pilot it as a form of resident parking, see what happens. If it doesn't work or the grass starts burning away, then we decide to backtrack on it. Once it's in there, we can mess around with how it's used, but I see this being a multi-purpose event type parking space, but certainly if it solves the problem of residential parking and it stays. See, I just think people don't want a parking lot in their yard. They want something that looks nice, but they don't want too much parking, but they want, so you can't make all the people happy all the time. You have to eventually make some decisions that, there's not enough parking in the village. We know that. Want to preserve green space. We know that. So this is, I think, a good idea that kind of bridges those two competing interests. And I would like to see at least they get costed out and see what it might cost, investigate what funds we could potentially use for it and take it from there. I think makes a lot of sense to me. It's a place that's underutilized right now. It's not, to me, the sunflowers are great. But
I don't want to do it with sunflowers.
no, I want the sunflowers. I want the sunflowers there to continue to be there.
But there are angles.
Yeah,
Every year,
but in the winter there's snow.
Christine and Mark Marion plant them in the spring.
So they get planted, so you can essentially move,
Oh, no,
move the sunflowers to make.
They do receive themselves, but
Yeah.
they still go through and
You
plant
can
hundreds
put
of
them
them.
anywhere you want, right, to make it as nice looking as possible.
Well, I would ask, still like Vanessa's idea about, let's get some data.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds
We
good.
ask that for all future events.
Haven't we been doing that for 25 years? As long as I've been here, 47, we've been asking people. And we come back with the same thing.
But nobody writes it down. That's a
Nobody writes
problem.
it down.
If it's not written down, it never happened.
No, that we don't have.
Yeah,
No.
I think I'm always a big data guy, but I think it's self-evident we don't have enough parking. I think that's it's self-evident. There's not enough parking. There's people that I think we can get data on it, sure, but we know we have a parking problem. We know we need more parking spots.
Right, how much parking, I think that's what the data is on.
I don't think
That's
it's
the
one or
other
two
question. I
spots.
think we need more parking.
You need every time.
But excuse me, if you're saying this is a parking problem, South Village, then you're not talking about an auditorium.
Yeah, when we,
You got, you know, you put this out in front as an issue for the auditorium.
right.
So
I think it's
leave
too,
it as an issue for the auditorium.
agreed. When I last did the parking committee, which is a few years ago now, I identified that the village has two problems, an auditorium parking problem and a resident parking problem. They're both parking problems, but they're different. And I think what Lydia and AP3 have attempted to do is address one of those problems with some suggestions and ideas. Again, I personally did handle the parking for a couple of years at the auditorium. I've talked to people that have done it, and I know for a fact we don't have enough parking for auditorium. I mean, we can get data on it, but if you know, having done it for a couple of years and having talked to people that I know we don't have enough parking, and this is probably the amount of spot, you know, just based off of my experience. Somewhere between 20 and 40 spots is what we need. And certainly Sharon can go another year and gather data and ask everybody walking through the door how many people they came in with today. But this will just go on. I just think we've been talking about parking for so long. I would like to start putting some wheels in motion and getting some estimates, getting some costs.
Did I hear you volunteer to get the estimates and the costs? Get that down.
I present, I actually, when I was
I know
doing
you've
parking
done some
committee,
work.
I had done some research and suggested costs involved with permitting papers. So I can certainly bring that up again.
Well, I can take this back to AB Creed, because the whole purpose of AB Creed is to do this kind of project,
Yes.
to do like work that.
And this was a lot of work, so I appreciate all the work that you guys put in.
You know, if the board, if AB Creed is willing to start, you know, plotting out how we can figure out what this is gonna cost and where it's gonna be.
But I think we're all in agreement that the location ought to be over here.
In that vicinity,
Yeah, in
yeah,
that vicinity. I think we're all in agreement on that.
yeah, just
Let's-
how,
let's-
that's-
I like the
that's fine.
idea of the permeable pavers,
I think some people are wondering whether we need 15 spots or 40 spots.
well, the cost.
Yeah, that too.
Or the geography.
I mean, it could be rolled out in phases. It could be rolled out in phases too. We could start with
You
15
can, right, you can start with a limited amount.
with the goal to increase it down the road. I mean, that's one option.
And I just personally want to say that I agree with Vince. I think that this should be an ongoing to start with, just create. If we think it's gonna work, maybe adapt it to other locations or something, but I think this is the need we have. I was trying. I don't want to.
That's my personal preference too, is and if you use this as a learning experience for then addressing the residential parking, which is separate.
I mean, if the favorite thing is workable and works, we could open up a lot of options.
Can I say something?
Yes.
From experience working over there, I can sit in the car, they know what I'm there for. I can stand by the car, drive around and around 2 or 3 times before they'll stop and ask where to park. We got bring the cars on the wrong place. Yeah, and some of them I have to actually stop, hand up, stop, say, "Where's the parking spot?" Tell them where to go. That's one of your problems, too.
I think it was raised in the plan here is to say that one of the downsides to the Zoom plot is we can't have permanent signage and wayfinding signs there. And that would be another advantage of having this, is that we could make a sign and say it's the auditorium parking, so it would direct people there, and it is in the front of the village, so when people come down into the village, it's very obvious where that parking lot is versus the ball field or the Episcopal church or wherever. So I think it would actually stop maybe some people from entering into the core of the village and make your life a little bit easier too.
Well,
Chase around.
I don't mind it, I'm just saying that's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, yeah.
Jams up
The
traffic.
easier you make it for people to park, the more likely they are going to park in that spot. And that's why I think, again, this general vicinity, whatever the solution looks like, that vicinity makes a lot of sense to me, because that's where most people are going to pass by as they're entering the village. Most people are not going to come out the entrance to the village, I would say.
Okay, any more on this topic? Thank you, Lydia.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Larry, by the way, for the comprehensive.
It was my.
Could I make another comment?
Sure.
Your problem is just about the right size. If you get, on a bus or something, that gotta watch out. Get over 16 passengers in New York State DOT, special license for passenger endorsement.
Yep.
I don't want my well, I'm talking about.
I got one.
Got a built-in volunteer. Okay, next, comments from the village attorney.
You can't do it.
Okay, village mayor, nothing to add, trustees? Tom?
I will not be here on the 21st.
Matt?
Had a very brief conversation with a rep for a company that does the electric charging stations for electric vehicles this morning, and set up another appointment with a local person to find out some more information about that going forward. Potentially add a couple of charging points in municipal parking spots somewhere in the village. Again, very early days, but just want to get some ideas about that. The more boxes we check on green initiatives in the village, the more it opens up further funding for so-called green cities. Things like that. So we've already done the LED lighting. This would be one option. Just gonna set up an appointment for a second appointment with a local. This is a national rep, so they're putting in contact with somebody.
Tina? Ready? Nope. Okay, public comment. Samantha.
Speaking of LED lights, I still don't have. So I emailed him last week, we never got a response back. So if you can look into that, it's been 6 months.
We're on it. We've literally emailed and called, and Kim put in a ticket.
No, I understand, but like I emailed her, I didn't get anything back.
We spoke.
It
We spoke.
was a week and a half ago.
I think the problem is it's not really a ticket. I didn't realize that the whole lamp itself, the whole
Hasn't been
fixture
switched
itself
over.
has
Okay.
not been switched over, so I misunderstood. what that
You can
is.
have mine.
I would love it. No.
Oh.
Lance.
When does the curtain drain come back on your board's agenda?
21st.
That's where that well-dressed fellow who's here. He was the attorney for them. He asked, I think it will go to the zoning board.
No, I think there's some confusion. You're talking about 11A.
Oh, 11 I'm sorry. Yeah. Curtain drain is next meeting.
21st.
Let us know your concerns
I'm concerned.
in writing.
I think you on the planning board at that time. We have concerns.
Danielle?
Question about the work that was done with the drain. So those pieces of road that they cut to put the drain or to put the piping in. I'm gonna break my car.
We
It
are,
keeps on getting deeper, just on bar.
it's getting repaved in the fall.
Yes, but it's sinking by the day. I mean, I used to go from farm, now it's like boom, on Barn Alley. I'm just saying, I'm afraid it's gonna like cave in. That's how bad it is.
I'll drive my little car there, see if I can get by without bottoming out.
Do it, and I wonder,
Yes.
are we gonna work on that little section of green space that, the actual, ditch was there, that it's all filled in now? Can we have a conversation about making that look pretty?
Yes.
Or
Yes, we may. Yes, we
I would
can.
like to have wildflowers there or something, not all the way, but just maybe a couple feet down on the side of the road.
Anyone else? That's it. Okay, no executive session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion. All aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. all.
Everybody.